I wonder if you would indulge me just a little bit so that I may do a little historical work, a little history work. Many historians and observers of culture claim that you and I are now living in a time that they call a postmodern time. They referred to what came before this time as modernity. So modernity is not just modern life. It was a certain time in history that began with the Industrial Revolution and probably lasted until the latter part of the last century. And modernity brought with it a certain way of thinking, a certain way of acting. We've all been shaped by it. A way that focused on the future and focused on progress. At the height of modernity, and some of you may remember this time, you would have heard something like, everything is getting better every day and in every way. Post-modernity, the time that we're living in, wonders about that conclusion. And you and I are living in light of that wondering. We're living in light of the disillusionment that has happened to many people because everything didn't get better. Modernity wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. Progress didn't deliver what we thought it was going to deliver. Progress itself has become a mixed reality. We developed great technologies that enabled us to go anywhere we wanted to go and consume anything we wanted to consume whenever we wanted to, but we didn't think about the destructive impact that all of that would have on the earth. We developed technologies that enabled us to communicate across the globe in a split second. But we weren't ready for the challenging consequences of those technologies for our political life, for our family life. More than ever, we have become divided, and in part, not completely, but in part because of those technologies. And some of us have become crippled in our ability to socially interact with others because of those technologies. Progress, while appreciated, hasn't been without its challenges. The focus on the future and the supposed brightness that the future will bring has not always been helpful. The issue in our first reading for today, which I find to be a marvelous reading, is definitely the future. What will enable a bunch of exiles to move forward into the future with confidence? Now, these exiles are people who have come back to Jerusalem or are being encouraged to come back home. But guess what? As I said last week, things aren't good at home. Disappointment reigns. Through the prophet, God speaks, "Listen to me, you who seek the Lord. Look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the quarry from which you were dug. Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah who bore you. For he was but one when I called him, but I blessed him and made him many." In other words, as you're trying to figure out how you make it into the future, don't put all your money into the future basket. Look to the past. Look to the foundational story of Abraham and Sarah, who really were quite insignificant, who didn't have any land, who were childless, but ended up with land and descendants as many as the stars in the sky. Look to something bigger, Isaiah is telling the exiles, than the latest and the greatest. The latest technological gadget, while downright interesting, often isn't long-lasting. It will give you what you want for a little while, but soon you're going to need something newer, which after you get that something newer, then you're going to want something even newer. The newer, like what Isaiah says will happen to the earth and the heaven, will vanish like smoke, wear out like a garment, and die like gnats. In other words, it won't last. It won't last. Progress sometimes can disappoint. As you move into the future, look to the past. Now, I don't say that with the intent of encouraging you to live in the past, which is what a lot of people do. Living in the past is not the full life. Getting stuck in the way we used to do things, the songs we used to sing, the way the family and the church and the culture used to be is not what I'm recommending. God's invitation to the Israelites to look to the past wasn't intended to keep them tied to the past. It was meant to compel them to move boldly into the future. It was to remind them of their foundation, who they were and are as God's people. Let's face it, we all need foundations. We need something upon which we can build our lives. Kids need something foundational. Now, honestly, this is just a pet peeve I have as a pastor, but I'm always bothered when parents say to me in terms of their kids' religious life, well, I don't want to impose anything on them. I want them to decide for themselves. Well, how can they decide for themselves when they have nothing against which they can measure their decision? They need more than hockey and soccer and music or good grades. They need big picture, identity-giving foundations. My wife and I celebrated our anniversary this past week. We've been married for a long time, and 42 years. When we were having dinner out on Tuesday, I asked her the question that everybody's always asked when you've lived a long time or you've been married for a long time. I mean, what do you think the secret to the longevity is? And her response was the ability to forgive. And I thought, that's really good. Really good. And building on that, I said that in our case, our ability to do that, to forgive, is rooted in our sharing the same big story. We're on the same page together. We have a common foundation. Now, both Bev and I have realized after we've been married for a long time, we're not similar in a lot of ways. We're very, very different people. And that's become clearer the longer we're married. But we have something that came out of our past, something that was given to us by our parents and by many others who have gone before us, something that has 1,000-year roots. As we go forward, we look to the rock from which we were hewn. Now, I am not suggesting at all that this is some kind of guarantee. Don't hear that at all. It is not some kind of guarantee. Life happens, people disappoint, relationships go sour, even with common foundation. But what I am suggesting is that we are served by foundations that often are not of our own creating. We need something bigger, a bigger story, a narrative that stands the test of time. Building your life on the latest and the greatest, building your life on simply on your choices and your preferences and your opinions is quite flimsy. You need something more, and kids need something more as well. The church needs something more, something lasting. And I think that's why, in part, Matthew tells the story of Peter, the rock, and his confession of faith. Now, you'll note that for Israel, that something more, as God through the prophet Isaiah reveals, is the foundation of promise. You've got to hear this. The story of Abraham and Sarah, if it is anything, is a story of promise. Sarah can't conceive. The future for them feels empty, but God says He's got a big future for them. The promise is that they will be blessed with children and land. From one couple will come many, a great nation. In other words, God is a promise-making God. The foundation for us, we Christians call it baptism, is a foundation of promise. The past to which we look is filled, replete, saturated with promise. And that's important to underscore, because some of us look to the past and you know what we see? abuse and neglect and abandonment. And of course, those are all a part of your story, and you cannot run from them. And by the way, they don't need to be hidden, as you've been taught that they should be hidden. But those realities are not your foundational story. You are a baptized child of God. You are immersed with the promises of God. You have been drowned with Christ and have been raised with Him. Your story is a story rooted in promise, and the promise hasn't finished its work on you or on us together. Listen to what God tells the exiles of Israel, people who are trying their darndest to make a way into the future. The Lord will comfort Zion, the devastated city of Jerusalem. He will comfort all her waste places and will make her wilderness like Eden, like the desert, like the garden of the Lord. Waters will flow. The God of promise will continue to do the work of promise. And note again how that work focuses on something that comes out of the past. Eden, the garden of the beginning. The prophet is taking exiles who know what it means to be landless back to the beginning, reminding them that the promise of God is about the business of the restoration of land and the returning of hope. They are taken back to Eden and assured that their future will be a matter of delight, joy, and gladness. Full, Isaiah says, of the voice of song, that is to say, marvelous music. We gathered yesterday out front here and sang a little bit and played some bells and heard a young man who was incredible play the piano up here. This place was filled with the wonderful character, with the wonder of music. And what Isaiah says the future will look like will be an Eden that is not only beautiful, but an Eden that will have wonderful sounds, will have marvelous music. And part of what will make it so marvelous, will make the sound so wonderful, is the teaching that will still come forth to the nation. Once again, Isaiah is taking us to the past, when God, through him, says, "Listen to me, my people, and give heed to me, my nation, for a teaching will go out from me." A teaching. The Jews call it the Torah. As Isaiah is helping exiles make a way into the future, he is pointing them back to the great teaching of Israel. The great teaching, some people call it the law, is a gift from the past, but its power is not limited to the past. It gives direction for the future. You and I not only need foundations, we need direction. Our kids need directions. They need directions for value. They and we all need teaching. We don't do well without teaching. To think that we can thrive in the future on the basis of what we teach ourselves, what our desires want for us, or what the neighbors want for us, is to go down a very dangerous path. We need guidance, and we need limits, and we need the teaching, which, by the way, is why we offer Bible study here, why we provide faith formation classes for children and adults, and why we encourage kids to go through the process of confirmation. We live in light of something bigger, something deeply rooted, and that something needs to be remembered. The story needs to be told, and that teaching needs to be taught. And as it is remembered, and I experience this all the time, as it is remembered, told, and taught, community is formed. Out of one comes many. You have what you need to move forward into the future with confidence and courage. Oh, it's not easy, I know. The ruins are many. The disappointments are all around us. But you have a foundation. You are children of promise. Your roots go all the way back to creation itself, to the abundant Garden of Eden. And yes, you even have direction for your life. You are a part of the we, and we go into the future together. Amen.